Angel investors actually, they're your employees and they pay for it. So you need to find people actually who are potentially good employees for you, because they're going to help you to find funding. They're going to help you find clients. They're going to give you strategy sessions. So they're going to work for you. And plus they're paying for it. Of course, they get equity in return. But, find people who actually you would like to work with, who you could actually hire as employees or co-workers or co-founders.
I'm Patrick J. McGinnis, and I coined the term FOMO. That's short for fear of missing out, and it's why some people end up following the crowd when they should be blazing a trail of their own. But if you want to achieve greatness in business and life, you've got to break free. Come on, I'll show you how. This is FOMO Sapiens, where we explore how entrepreneurial thinkers find the inspiration and the courage to build exceptional lives. Welcome back to FOMO Sapiens, the show for entrepreneurial thinkers. I'm your host, Patrick J. McGinnis, and today we are talking to Firat İşbecer, who is the CEO of Commencis, an entrepreneur and an angel investor, and he's based in Turkey. Now, he co-founded a company called Pozitron, which is one of Europe's earliest and fastest growing mobile banking and payment software companies, later selling it to a strategic acquirer. Now, he's been named Turkey's most active angel investor 2 years in a row, currently serves on the board of Endeavor Turkey, and was selected to be on Fortune's Turkey 40 Under 40 list a bunch of times. So basically, we have a fantastic person and also somebody who can tell us about what's going on over in Turkey. Welcome to the show, Firat.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for your invitation.
I'm so glad to have you. So everybody, full disclosure, we met at an Endeavor. Endeavor is a global entrepreneurship organization. You heard it in Firat's bio. I'm involved as well. We met at this event that was held by Endeavor back in Miami in December. We started talking and I was just like, do you remember this? I was like, you need to come on FOMO Sapiens.
Yeah, that was a great week, actually. We had a really nice conversation and I'm really happy to be here.
All right. So Firat, you butter me up there with a nice compliment, but I still have to ask you the question I ask every guest on this show. And the question is this: tell me something unexpected you learned about yourself that changed everything.
That I hate working for somebody else.
Oh, really? And how did you discover that?
Well, I discovered that actually because I was doing some internship in college, and I had a boss. And of course, she was great and everything, but that feeling of working for somebody else and, not being able to create something on my own, not being able to do an entrepreneurial journey actually made me like, am I going to be like this for the rest of my life? So a couple of years later, I found myself as an entrepreneur and I was like really happy. And I've been working as an entrepreneur and not reporting anybody ever since. It's been 20 years.
Are your parents entrepreneurs?
Not really, actually. It kind of skips a generation. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He had a cologne house in Istanbul in the Grand Bazaar, which was actually started 100 years ago.
No way.
Yeah, he's an immigrant during the First World War, actually right before the First World War. My grandfather immigrated from now North Macedonia, from the Balkans to Istanbul during the First Balkan Wars. And then he started this little shop in Grand Bazaar. And then he started selling some cologne and eau de toilettes, which is called Etem Ruhi, which is my name of my grandfather. So he was an entrepreneur. That business was doing quite well up until the 50s when most mass production came to the market, and he was not doing a mass production, so he had to shut down the business. My father was an engineer, so he was a civil engineer. He did not really care about the business or the brand. But me and my brother, when we became entrepreneurs a couple of years later, we decided to revive the brand of my grandfather's. So the cologne brand is back. So it skips a generation. Wow. So my father was not an entrepreneur, or my mom, but my grandfather was the entrepreneur, actually.
Wow, that's an amazing story. If anybody's been to the Grand Bazaar, I mean, it's like you have all these sort of different stalls with people. And I imagine like back when he did it, it was even more crazy. But it is like a purely commercial place where there's so much transaction happening and it is like very alive. And it is the kind of place where you really need to be a true entrepreneur to succeed.
It's one of the longest lasting shopping malls in the world, almost 600 years.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so you got this in your blood. It skips a generation, but it's back in yours. And then you go out and start this company called Pozitron. Now, did you do this like obviously you grew up in Turkey, you went to school in Turkey. Did you build this company in Turkey? And what was that like, in the time when like mobile banking was new?
So we built a business in Turkey with my brother, actually. So my brother had started this company, and he had a partner. He was not getting along really well. The visions did not match. So I was doing my master's in Paris. Actually, I was studying in Paris and working for a think tank at the same time. My plan was to become like not an entrepreneur, but I was trying to become a diplomat. That was my first idea of a career, actually. Then I realized that I don't want to work for anyone. So my brother said, you should come back to Turkey and join me in this company because I think there's a big potential. So I quit my job in France, Paris, and went to Istanbul. This is like back in 2006 when Turkey was doing quite well in terms of growth. We had just been, through a crisis. The business was growing. The country was growing as well. And I joined them. And then this was before all this hype about mobile banking and, apps were out there because there was no iPhone. So
there was no venture capital in Turkey back then, as I recall. Almost
there
none.
was no VC. There were two funds. They were trying to allocate some funding, and the total of those two funds were $2.5 million. And they only invested in like two companies that went bust. Ours wasn't one of them. So we had to bootstrap the business. And then we focused on software. We didn't have enough resources to focus on big software like CRM or ERP, applications. We said like we need to have a small team. We need to really bootstrap, and we have to find something that's small but built to scale. And that was mobile applications. So that's how we started, actually.
FOMO. That's incredible. And then you scale this thing and you end up selling it. How did you know? I mean, so like, it's a kind of interesting question for an entrepreneur. Like, when do you know it's the right time to sell? Like, what gave you the conviction? Like, let's sell this thing rather than keep growing it on our own.
So first of all, we were lucky because we focused on mobile applications and we focused on banking. And in our second year, the operating system was only Symbian, and it was not actually taking off. So we thought that the business was going to go bust. But then the iPhone came out and the App Store was introduced, and that skyrocketed our business. So we were really lucky in terms of timing, but we knew what was coming, but we were not expecting how strong the impact is going to be. And actually it was beyond our expectations. Everybody switched to the iPhone, and iOS became like the dominant operating system, and App Store helped us distribute our apps and the enterprises apps without the limitation of the telco company, because they were actually controlling the whole narrative back then. So App Store kind of liberated us from telco companies being the monopoly in terms of distribution. Anyways, we focused on it, and then the business scaled. Like we almost tripled our revenues in 8 years in a row, and then reached to just about $10 to $15 million in revenue, and the multiples in that time for mobile companies were like the AI multiples today. So we knew that the business was going to keep growing, and we were going to be turning profit easily because we were bootstrapping already. But in terms of inflection point, we saw that the expectation versus the valuation was peaking. And Turkey was kind of peaking as well. This was 2013. And then if you look at the CDNs and other metrics of Turkey back then, it was like a Western European country. And then we knew that Turkey wasn't a Western European country.
You're like, this is too good to be true.
Something needs to go wrong. Not need to go wrong, but something might go wrong, having lived in the country for more than 3 decades back then. So we thought this could be the time that we are actually de-risk, because everything that we have built and we have worked on our lives, 99% of our assets and our fictitious net worth was in this company, Pozitron. So we said, let's try to find an investor or get a strategic or get an acquisition so that actually we can de-risk our 99% of our whole life from this company. And that's how actually it happened.
Oh yeah, I get that. I mean, so first of all, if we're not picking on Turkey, we love Turkey, but Turkey is a country that's had ups and downs. So if you've grown up, or I spent, we were talking in the green room before. I've been to Turkey 32 times. I used to be on the board of 2 companies in Turkey. I saw a lot of things. It's one of my favorite places in the world. But one knows that like there are cycles economically, and so you just have to be prepared that the bad thing might be coming. But what you said resonates with me so much, which is this. And I've seen this in my own life as an investor in companies that have taken off. It's like that paper gain, like you're like, wow, my company's worth a lot now. My shares are worth a lot. Well, you can't eat theoretical returns. You got to sell the stock in order to have the cash in the bank in order to do the next thing. So the idea of de-risking, even if you quote unquote leave a little money on the table, is much better than holding on to get the incremental dollar and then something goes wrong. And then you know what happens? You're looking in the rearview mirror with a lot of regret. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So you did exit. You ended up selling to a strategic that eventually went as part of a public company. So you kind of went through this whole journey. And now you have another company, and we can talk about that. But I really want to talk about something you've done that's interesting, which is we mentioned earlier when you started, there was no VC in Turkey. There was almost no capital. You like single-handedly have decided to fix that. You've been a very active angel investor. You told me you invested in around 60 companies so far. So talk about like, how did you get started? Because a lot of people listening to the show say to themselves, like, I would love to be an angel investor. How did you get started? Did you wait until you had all the money from the exit, or you just start, kind of small? Like, what's that process for you?
We actually started before our exit. I say we because it's me and my brother most of the time. We founded the company together. We grew it together. We sold it together, and we do our investments together. So it's not like a royal we. I'm actually talking about me and my brother as we. So we started before actually we did the exit because the company was turning profit. The company we founded was actually a profitable company. And then we were thinking about, where to put the money. And then we saw that there is a huge opportunity in the startup space because it was just at a very nascent stage. It's like US in the 90s or, name me another country in the early 2000s. And Turkey's early 2010s were like this. There were up and coming amazing startups trying to get funding. And there was no VC in Turkey back then. Some private equities, but not VCs. So we said, let's find the right entrepreneurs, let's invest in the right themes and right companies, and let's make this happen. So we did not really have a huge strategy, but we said, all we need to find is some good Turkish entrepreneurs in the internet space, building something crazy, nice, and has a lot of potential, and kind of spray and pray. So we started in 2012, and in 12 years, we invested in 4 or 5, maybe 6 startups a year. So if you do the math, 12 multiplied by 5 makes it 60. I know it's a great number, but if you've been doing this for 12 years, the compounding effect actually makes it like a huge number. But it has been only 5 to 6 startups per year. So we started way before, but it accelerated after the exit because we really wanted to give back, and we knew how to run and build and scale startups, so we could actually convey that experience to the new founders that were actually getting funding from us. We did not have VC size investments. Our average ticket size was angel size, but it was a great way to kickstart these companies and help these entrepreneurs and the founders make it to the next level in terms of like finding a VC or doing like a Series A round.
Now, I'm curious. So you started, what year did you start again?
So the company, 2006, Pozitron. I joined in 2006, and we exited in 2014. But we started the angel investments at 2012.
Okay, 2012, which is, by the way, that's 13 years ago, let's say. And, it is 13 years ago. So I'm curious, in the early days when you first started doing angel investing, I imagine there were far fewer companies. And, it was just all of it was an earlier stage, far less competition. Later on, you had many more companies, much more competition. Do you feel like you made better investments earlier on or later on when, you had just the whole ecosystem was way more sophisticated, or does it not matter?
A great question, actually. It keeps getting more and more difficult, Patrick. So even if you find the best entrepreneur with the best setup, who's actually a rocket ship, who might grow into a unicorn, they make one mistake and they're gone in this market. But 12 years ago, it wasn't the case. 11 years ago, it wasn't the case. You could actually make mistakes and still survive. So I think right now the competition is so fierce, and if you want to build a high scale up company that can become a unicorn, there is no space for mistake, or you need to be really good, well funded. So in Turkey, what we are still lacking is funding. There is of course some access to capital, but it's still not enough. So Turkish entrepreneurs are not allowed to make as many mistakes as this is all for emerging markets, not only Turkey, as their counterparts in the US. So I would say 10 or 12 years ago, angel investing, startup investing was more profitable, and road to success was easier than it is today.
Now, have you? Okay. I'm gonna ask you a naughty question, but we're friends. Which is like, there's a lot of flavor of the month investing in venture capital, even in emerging markets, especially in the U.S. where you have just so many companies, but like everywhere. Remember, like in the Internet of Things. Remember that, like that whole thing. Do you find that you get sucked into the FOMO trends, or are you able to? Does your thesis allow you to how do you avoid investing in things that are just like the flavor of the moment versus investing in things you think are going to be around for a while?
I think it's sometimes good to speculate and be a part of that speculation if you're an angel investor, because you can have a secondary opportunity at a Series A or a Series B. And before it becomes a dud or a fad, you can actually exit the business. So sometimes I follow the crowd. It's good to be conformist in some ways, because now I see all the venture capital money going to AI. There's so many profitable companies out there. There's so many companies out there that are growing faster than these AI startups, but they don't get any investment. As an angel investor, if these companies are not generating cash, we need to do follow-on rounds. But if you invest in an AI startup and if it becomes a popular area of investment for VCs, then we might even have an exit without that company turning profit. So you should not think of you should not be the smartest person in the room. You should sometimes follow the pack. You don't have to be the leader of the pack. It's always good to be a part of the trend. So I don't think the trends are the right places to invest for VCs, but I'm not going to change the characteristics of the VC environment. That's not my mission. My mission actually is to invest, is to support the entrepreneur and exit with a multiple. And in some senses, sometimes it's always good to follow the flavor of the month.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this ever before. When you're doing angel investing, you're so early in the life of the company that the most important thing, besides having a decent business and a very good entrepreneur, obviously, is that you have to believe either maybe it becomes profitable and they don't need more capital, which the chances of that are quite low, or you have to believe that there's going to be somebody else willing to back this company and write that check. And so therefore, what you're kind of saying is, if a company is in a hot space, that the venture capitalists are going to be interested, assuming the company is good, and you're not going to have to struggle to raise more capital. So investing into a trend, making sure the company survives is the number one priority when you're that early in the game.
Exactly. And plus, if you're an angel investor, you also have a big responsibility for the entrepreneur, because you really need to move them to the next level. So if the next level never shows up, you always become a part of that business and you try to run the business together with the entrepreneur. And then even if you own 2% of the business, it takes a lot of time from your life. So for me, my main goal, actually, I really want to be a part of, businesses that are longer lasting, that are sustainable, and that makes a difference. But it's also important to be able to give the baton to the next level, where the VC or another strategic investor just comes in and they run the show after me. So it's important for us to be able to get to that level.
So I'm sure there's people listening right now who have a desire to raise capital, right? You FOMO Sapiens out there that have business ideas, and they want to, and they probably they're thinking I would love to raise money from angel investors, but you know what? It's it's hard to know who's good and who's bad as an angel investor. You can have somebody who gets a ton of value, or you can have somebody who never calls you again or isn't helpful. When you're an entrepreneur, what should you be looking for in the people that you go to raise capital?
If you can, angel investors actually, they're your employees and they pay for it. So you need to find people actually who are potentially good employees for you, because they're going to help you to find funding. They're going to help you find clients. They're going to give you strategy sessions. So they're going to work for you, and plus they're paying for it. Of course, they get equity in return. But find people who actually you would like to work with, who you could actually hire as employees or co-workers or co-founders. So when you find those people who are like-minded or actually can challenge you and can also contribute to some levels where you are not really strong at, then it's the right formula for finding the right angel investor. So I think when you are actually selecting a group of angel investors, they should not be a certain theme. They should all be from different backgrounds that can actually support you in different aspects of building and growing your business.
I've never heard that before, but I'm going to quote you now for the rest of my days, which is that angel investments work for you and they're paying their own salaries, which is like, it's such a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah. They're like, they're like the stock option employees, but they actually pay for it because they're outsiders.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. Now, I'm like, Firat comes on my show, drops some knowledge. Talk about, for folks who, because you have such experience, and like I wrote about this in the 10% Entrepreneur, which is my first book. Like, people think being an angel investor is like a great investment, but most startups fail. So you do need to put together a portfolio, which you have done. But like, what should, is it a good investment? Like you do it for more than just the money, right? You're doing it because you believe in the ecosystem, you want to give back. But like, if you were to sum up all your investments and then like, look back and be like, is this a good asset class to invest in? Like, what would be your answer?
It depends. Okay. So if you're a super angel, and if you're well known in some area, for example, myself, I'm really well known among Turkish entrepreneurs. Any Turkish entrepreneur, be it in US, Switzerland, Sweden, Turkey, Nigeria, South Africa, they know me and they come to me, they reach out to me for investment. So I can actually find good deals. But if you are not a super angel, you cannot find good deals. So it's not a great asset class for people who actually don't, become super angels. So I would not recommend it.
Yeah, it's really hard to do it, right?
If you have a friend and family, if you have a good group of friends and family, and if there's one guy out there who might become a really good entrepreneur, that's your lucky day. It's not going to repeat itself. But super angels, we are a part of the ecosystem. So we are like the, let's say, Kleiner Perkinses, Accels, or Sequoias of angel investment. Deals come to us. But if you're an angel investor, I'm putting money here and there, it's just luck. And it's not a great asset class. More than 90% fail. Outside the US, I would say 95% fail.
Yeah, that's right. Or even if they're successful, this is the thing that kind of like I learned the hard way. Even the good one, it's like the good ones take, it's like even the successful ones take like 10 years. So you just can't, it just takes a long time. It's a really put small numbers into a bunch of different things and have a lot of patience. Have a belief in it, enjoy the process. There you go. If you think you're going to put $20,000 or $25,000 or $50,000 into one company that somebody started and somehow you're going to be retiring on that, you are unfortunately, the chances are you will not be very happy.
Yeah, it's an overnight success, 10 years in the making. The biggest and the best investment return I got from an angel investment took 12 years to exit. So it was 12 years is normal, especially outside the US. Sometimes it's 3-4 years if you're lucky. If it's like a pandemic era kind of a environment where you actually invest in 2019 and you get a huge exit in 2021, it only happens like once every decade or like every 2 decades. So it doesn't happen all the time. But having said that, if you want to learn about a subject, if you want to learn about an industry, invest. It's a very accelerated way of learning about an industry. So if you are not, very knowledgeable about gaming industry, you put money in a gaming company and then they're going to ask for more money and you're going to start learning really fast.
Totally agree. It is a really great way. It's a great way to learn.
You're going to ask the question, where does my money go? So people ask, the first question they ask, where does my money go? And they start to understand, they study the industry and they get actually knowledgeable about it. I've learned so much about different industries outside my area thanks to angel investing because I had to learn.
FOMO. Now, before we get to the lightning round, I do want to ask you about your new company, Commencis, which has a cool name, by the way. And I was looking, you have offices in Istanbul, in London, in Izmir, Turkey, and in Berlin. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Ugh, I read that yesterday. It's stuck in. I was like, man, I want to go visit all these places. So, like, why did you do this company? What like attracted you to this opportunity?
So when we did our exit more than 10 years ago to the British company that bought us, it was a very interesting actually deal. It took us 4 years to actually leave that company. But during our time in this UK company based out of London, an American company came and fully acquired the company that actually acquired us. So the small fish gets swallowed by a bigger fish, which gets swallowed by a whale. So that was actually the story. So the Americans reached out to us and they said, like, we want to keep these assets, but we don't want to keep the Istanbul asset, which was originally our company, the one we sold to, our required. So we did a management buyout. When we did the management buyout, we were still focusing on mobile software, mobile banking, and similar stuff. We saw that the company we sold was a product company, but what we bought back was mostly like a services company. So we said there might be an opportunity here because in Turkey, you don't really have these global software service providers like Accentures and everything. They just had pulled out of Turkey. So we saw an opportunity. We could be the number one digital transformation company in terms of software services and design and become like a big brand in the region. So Commencis actually derives from the verb commence. This is where your digital transformation commences. So we work with large enterprises such as banks, insurance companies, airlines, and like retailers to actually commence their digital transformation journey. So that was actually the move we had planned when we started this business back in 2018. It's grown really big. It's almost more than 500 employees, all white collar, software engineers, designers. We have some AI functions as well at the moment. We work with one of the biggest brands and one of the biggest logos in the region. So the business has been growing fast. Of course, producing in Turkey and selling outside Turkey is an opportunity as well. We have great engineering talent in Turkey, and it's not as popular as in India or Romania or Poland, but actually we're really good. So we thought we could actually find a way to market and reach this Turkish engineering talent outside Turkey. So that's why we opened these offices and joint ventures in Berlin, Germany, and also in London. Now we are actually focusing on expanding in the Middle East, could be Saudi or UAE. But that's the story actually. The bottom line was actually building a powerhouse from Turkey and servicing both Turkish clients, which is not a small country, it's almost $1 trillion economy, plus selling Turkish engineering and design talent outside Turkey.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And, it kind of reminds me of like in the airline space, airline repair. Istanbul is like a regional. I know this because I looked at buying one of these companies when I was in private equity, but you forget like it's like the center of this region. Well, you forget if you're American. If you live in Istanbul, you know this. But you can service the Middle East. You can service Europe. It's a really good center. You have a lot of talent. Like you mentioned, your dad was an entrepreneur. Like Turkey produces a ton of entrepreneuring talent. So for folks that don't know about Turkey, like go look in the Wikipedia because it's a really interesting place to do business, to visit, to have a delicious meal and other things like that. Now, Firat Bey, we call somebody Bey as an honorific in Turkey. Firat Bey, are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
All right, that's good. I know you are. You're always ready. All right. What is a favorite quote?
Well, set yourself impossible goals and try to reach those goals. Even the distance you've covered is going to get you somewhere. I think it's Richard Branson.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. That's actually really, really good. Favorite use case for ChatGPT?
Oh yeah. So it's my doctor, basically. So I upload my blood tests. I upload them every 3 months. I get the trend analysis. I also get my dietary, prompts from GPT. When I'm like feeling a little bit under the weather, I go to GPT. It's actually become my healthcare consultant.
That's great. And nobody said that before. So that's a fresh one. I like that. What's one piece of advice you give to your future self?
Great question. Try to stay healthy, and then also focus on other aspects of life other than business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully ChatGPT will keep you healthy, your future self.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Final one. And I always have a custom one for my guest. And this is the custom one for you. First time visitor to Istanbul, where should they go?
Food, fun, or other?
You tell me. One of each, I guess.
I think they should go to Dolmabahce Palace because it's still decorated. No other palaces in Europe are decorated because the royal family is still on those furnitures, but the Turkish royal family, the Ottomans, they don't own the furnitures. It's the state. So the palace is still well decorated. So it's a good opportunity to see a European decorated palace in Europe, where you don't see it in the Versailles or other palaces.
Yeah, it's really nice. And then you can get in a car, some taxi or whatever, and I would go to dinner at sunset.
Yes. Well,
is that still cool, or is it, or like Doka? What's the Ulus
29
Yilmi Dokus?
Yeah, it's still they're both really popular, still popular, but there's some really new places in town. There's a 2 Michelin star restaurant opened by a friend of mine, Fatih Tutak, and there's Galada on the top floor of the Peninsula Hotel, which has most amazing views. You can see the both historical peninsula, the Bosphorus, and the Golden Horn. I think that trilogy is a great view. It's one of the best views in the world, and it's on the top floor of the Peninsula Hotel. So that's where I would go as well to eat.
Ooh, Firat Bey. Okay, when I come to Istanbul, we're going there. We are. All right, everybody. If you want to find out more about Firat, because he's a pretty fascinating guy, he's also pretty easy to find because he uses the same handle on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X Twitter. It's F İşbecer, which is FISBECER, because the C is a J when you say it in English. Firat, you're just I'm going to just describe you, true entrepreneur and fascinating man of the world. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Patrick, for the opportunity, and looking forward to hosting you in Istanbul.
Inshallah, I'll be there soon. FOMO Sapiens is recorded in New York City and can be found on YouTube at FOMO Sapiens or on your favorite podcast network. Theme music is by Mike McGinnis, editing and post-production is by Josh Elstro, and the show is produced by Matt Curtis and me. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and share it with your friends. And as always, you can find more about the show and me at FOMOSapiens.com and PatrickMcGinnis.com.